When you hear the word indigenous, what comes to mind? What do you picture? Be honest. Is it this image over here? A woman with long flowing hair, barefoot, close to nature. An image you've probably seen in movies, cartoons, or books before. For many of us, this is what the mainstream media has been feeding us for years. An over-romanticized, oversimplified depiction of what indigenous looks like. But what does indigenous actually mean? And who gets to define it? For me, indigenous is knowing when a fruit ripens and understanding what that says about the season. It is recognizing that the rivers are not just utilities. It is learning when to take from the forest and when to stop taking from the forest. I was born and raised in East Kalimantan, Indonesia, a country of 17,000 islands and home to over 1,300 indigenous tribes and ethnic groups. My grandparents migrated from the island of Sulawesi to another island far west called the island of Kalimantan, long before I was born. And they reside in East Kalimantan, a region so rich of rainforests, of rich biodiversities, and many different indigenous tribes and communities. So when I was growing up, I learned something long before I knew the word indigenous. I knew culture, I knew customs, I knew rituals, and I knew respect. In East Kalimantan, these communities, they coexist. They live together in harmony. And I was lucky enough to have grown up surrounded near these communities, near the customs and their ways of life. So even though by blood I come from an ethnic group all the way across the sea, I've been so lucky to have learned, listened, and been shaped by the ways of life of orang Kalimantan, or the people of Kalimantan. So when I speak today, I speak as someone who grew up surrounded by this knowledge, the knowledge that taught me something so valuable in life. It taught me how to listen. Not only to the people, but to the trees, to the river, to the forest, and to the land that I live on. These knowledges, I grew up with them. Not through textbooks, but through stories and through rituals. And sometimes, these knowledges does not take form in words, but in movement, in rituals, in traditions that embody their relationship with the land and the unseen world. One of the most sacred rituals is called the Belian ritual, which is a healing ceremony. And here, healing does not only mean healing a person. It is about restoring balance. During this ritual, there would be these dancers that would wear these metal bracelets around their ankle. And these bracelets would date 100 years old, passed down through generations from ancestors. They would wear these some kind of necklaces made out of tiger fangs and colorful beads that show how rich the culture is. And during this ritual, the spiritual beings would be called upon them to guide the process and to guide the ways of lives. And the goal here is not performance. It is to restore and repair what has been lost, what has been disrupted between the people, the land, and the unseen. Through regrounding, through respecting, and through remembering. In this culture, I learned something far beyond theories. Through the forest, through the land, and through the quiet spaces in between. According to their ways of lives, the Balik people, or the Orang Balik, which is the community that I really want to focus on today, they believe that forest is not just resources, they're mothers, who provides, who nourishes. The Balik people live in Sepaku, East Kalimantan in Indonesia, and their traditions and their culture and their language are quite closely related to other communities living in East Kalimantan, and yet they carry very, very different identity. For example, for the Balik people, they have this very intimate relationship with the forest. So for them, as I said before, the forest is their mothers, who nourishes, who provides. They see the river as not just utilities, but ancestors. And for them, the land is not something that we owned privately, but something that is shared. It is a shared responsibility that has been passed on through generations. And for the Balik people, this means living together in harmony. For example, now, for them, the trees are not just the trees are informations. This tree right here is called the blunga tree. And the blunga tree here is not just food, it's not just resources. Well, its fruit can replace rice during food shortages. Its stem provides drinkable water. And its tree itself can be used in many ceremonial practices. So every single part of this plant has a use, economical, ecological, or spiritual. And this is one of the many examples and proof that the forest provides. It teaches, it feeds, it protects. According to their ways of life, the Balik people, they believe that these information from the forest is not just mere myths or fairy tales. They're actually just like how we read our data. They're informations. For example, when the bengris tree bears red fruit, they know that a long drought is coming. When certain animals move, they know that the seasons are shifting. So I would ask you something. Right now, when I ask you, when I say the word indigenous, what do you picture? Is it still a stereotype from a movie? Is it still a stereotype from the cartoons that we used to read as children? Or is it the community that has lived and has kept the forest alive for so many centuries? Growing up in East Kalimantan, I was surrounded by these knowledges, surrounded by these customs. But right now, coming back home, I would see these tall buildings, I would see developments, I would see progress. And so I want to ask you something. When you hear the word sustainable, what do you see? When you hear the word progress or development, what do you picture? I imagine some of us would picture this. Modern buildings with solar panels, green rooftop gardens. Modern means futuristic skylines, glass buildings. And it makes me wonder, are these the only ways we recognize sustainability nowadays? And nothing wrong with that. I mean, I love going to the malls as well. But what about the communities that has sustained the forest, that has preserved the land? What about them? These knowledges has kept the forest alive, has kept the land alive, and we now live in a land that has been preserved by this system. And why are these knowledges and practices deemed backward or outdated? Makes me wonder. So now whenever I go back home, when I would see these tall buildings or highways or cranes stretching across the horizons or gaps where trees used to stand, I would wonder, what happened? What happened to my home? What happened when development forgets to listen? Growing up surrounded by this knowledge, surrounded by the community, living near them, taught me something so valuable. That sustainability doesn't always have to look modern. And that wisdom doesn't always come in the language that we expect. These visible or invisible practices have created visible biodiversity. They've kept visible forest, visible wildlife, visible land. And when we start to ignore these invisible forces, visible consequences start to arise in flood that comes too quickly, in heat that lingers longer, in water systems that change. And right now, this is a lived reality for the Balik people in East Kalimantan. There's a new development of the new capital city being built there. And the move here is driven by real problems. Jakarta, which is the current capital city of Indonesia, is overcrowded, overpolluted, and slowly sinking. And IKN, or the new capital city in East Kalimantan, is deemed to be more sustainable, more green, more modern. So for the nation, this represents hope, new hope. But for the communities living there, this means a massive transformation of their land, of their sacred ancestral land. One elder used to say, dulu harus 3 hari baru banjir. Sekarang hujan 2 jam aja udah cukup. Which translates to, it used to take 3 full days of rain for it to flood. Now all it takes is 2 hours. I'm not here to argue against development. But I am here to ask, what happened when development forgets to listen? The Balik people believes that the forest listens. So the question is, are we willing to listen? Are we willing to listen to knowledges that are not published or written in books? Are we willing to listen to the practices or the ways of lives that are not backed up by formal science? Sometimes, the future is not something that we build from scratch. Oftentimes, it is something that we protect, something that we preserve, something that we remember. So maybe, just maybe, progress is not about building faster or higher, but about considering and listening deeper. Thank you.